May I, Part 5, The End. You and Dave go to Mars. Joe Rogan Experience number 3000. Sometime in the future. On a Monday. Surrounded by Leon's bodyguards, Dave, You, and Leon walk into the Joe Rogan studios. The location is safe. Joe maintains his own personal security detail, but Leon isn't taking any chances with Dave and You. After this podcast they will jump from nearly unknowns to being the most famous married couple on the planet when Leon announces to Joe's listeners who they really are. You sits directly across from Joe, Dave to her right with a laptop, and Leon to Joe's left. It's a full house and destined to be Joe's longest podcast ever. Joe, Leon, who have you brought me today? Leon, You and Dave, the first two people I will send to Mars. Joe reaches over the table and shakes Yu's hand. He extends it to Dave, but Dave turns his eyes to his computer ignoring Joe's gesture. You, sorry, he's a bit OCD at times. Joe, no problem. You, and he's mute. Joe is confused, mute. Joe pauses and then asks Leon, how can you send a person to Mars who doesn't communicate verbally? Isn't that a liability? Leon, normally yes, but Dave and You can communicate telepathically faster and more efficiently than any two people verbally. Joe, loudly and surprised, telepathy? Are you talking about using your BrainLink trademark symbol technology? Leon, no. Joe, so how do they communicate telepathically? Leon, I don't know. Joe, but you know they can. Leon, as will you, and all of your listeners shortly. Joe, okay, let's get into this. Where do we start? Leon, it's a long story. Joe, it's my podcast, make it as long you like. I have nothing else planned today except the Kill Tony podcast tonight, and I assume we'll be done by then. You, I guarantee we'll be done by then. Joe, we have tickets for Kill Tony too, and Dave plans on signing up. Joe, a mute comic? You, I'll speak for him. Joe, are you two communicating as we speak? You, yes, but he hasn't told me to say anything specific. When he does I'll let you know, or he'll speak through his computer. Joe, and you and Dave don't know how this telepathic connection between you works? You, no. Joe, fuck. But you can prove it? You, yes. Joe, I don't know where to start. Leon, let me give you the backstory. Leon explains the story of his teenage years at his Uncle Joe's farm in Saskatchewan, how he escaped the South American environment that he grew up in. One not conducive to his beliefs, for a second chance in Canada. He tells Joe about the satellite dish on the farm and how he would use it to scan the cosmos for signals from space but failed to find one before he graduated high school and left the prairies for university. Leon continues to explain about his cousin Doug and his hockey obsession, and the unfair distribution of electricity on the farm. Joe laughs hard at the secret kill switch Leon installed on his Commodore 64. Leon, and when Doug made it to a junior professional team a few years later he invested his signing bonus into my first company, which as you know Joe I sold for $1 billion. At which point in time, most people then believed I was a billionaire, and I was, for a minute or two. Then I transferred $10 million to Doug removing my billionaire status, but making him an instant millionaire. Leon, unfortunately shortly afterwards Uncle Joe died from cirrhosis. I believe it's from the crappy Calgary export beer that he drank day and night, but who knows? Joe, Calgary export? I've been to Calgary, I don't remember drinking that beer. Dave, via voice synthesis throughout podcast it's disgusting, like they only used the bottom of the barrels. Leon, besides the point. Uncle Joe was gone, Doug returned to the family farm, intent on selling it with the intention of placing his mother in a condo in the city or town of her choosing. But then, instead of selling the farm he leased out the cropland, sold the cattle and let the thousands of acres of pasture return to nature. Not because he's an environmentalist, simply because he was tired of the smell, the noise, the hassle. He was a hockey player who had a farm. Not the other way around. Secretly Dave and You are communicating back and forth, discussing the podcast in their minds. Joe notices their 1-second long glances between them. They look like teenagers in love, not adults. Leon continues, Doug was free of the farm, a millionaire, offering to invest in my next venture, and on his way to the NHL. When, of course, he was injured by a bad check, ending his career, like a typical movie scenario, but real life. Sorry Joe, I said it was long. Joe, keep going, I trust you man. Leon, after his injury Doug had nothing to do, he could have restarted the farm life but was done with that hassle, so I suggested a new project he and I could work on alone, SETI. Joe, but SETI already exists. Leon sarcastically, their SETI, the one that has found nothing but one maybe signal never to be repeated? How much has been invested? What have they found? What could they do with a signal anyway? Joe, true, but what could you do with a signal? Leon, I'm about to show you. Leon explains to Joe how Doug traveled the prairie provinces meeting farmers and buying old satellite dishes. Doug spent 2 years and bought over 999 dishes for the project. He set them up throughout his pasture land while Leon accessed them remotely and built his own radio array to search the skies for aliens. Joe, and you / he didn't tell anyone what you were doing? Leon, no, remember by now I was no longer Doug's geeky cousin from another country, I was me, Leon Smuck. So when Doug's neighbors and the community started wondering about the field of dishes, Doug simply said Leon is eccentric, he likes dishes and I'm storing them for him. Joe, and they bought it? Leon, look at me, my life, I'm the definition of eccentric, of course they bought it. Plus it's Saskatchewan, all they really care about is farming and hockey. Doug can change any conversation in a second with his stories about how he met Gretzky when he tried out for the Phoenix Coyotes. Joe, okay, but how does that get us to these two? Who I've been watching these past few minutes and they definitely have a connection, but telepathic. Leon, should we demonstrate? Joe, please. Leon pulls out a new pack of standard playing cards, tells Joe he can use another deck if he thinks the cards are marked. The cards are not marked. Leon, technically one of his guards, bought them at a dollar store on the way to the studio. Leon hands the cards to Joe to inspect and shuffle. He mixes the cards for a few minutes. Leon, would you agree that there is no way Dave or Kat you could know the order of those cards, correct? Joe, I agree. Leon, the odds are, a deck of cards have never been shuffled into the precise order you just created, ever. Joe grins, I said I agreed. Leon instructs Joe to hand the deck to Kat Yu. Kat Yu accepts the deck and holds them close to her chest so Dave cannot see, and then peeks at the first card, the 7 of diamonds. Dave types 7D into his laptop and hits enter. The computer speaks 7 of diamonds and Kat Yu shows Joe the card. Before Joe can comment, Dave submits the next card, 3 of clubs. Joe looks around like he's seeing a trick, but can't figure out how they are doing it. Are they using signals? Leon, no, when Kat Yu showed you the card she saw the next card and that information was instantly sent to Dave. Dave pulls out a roll of duct tape from his laptop bag and begins wrapping it around his head, blinding himself and removing any doubt about signals. The demonstration continues, even faster now. As quickly as Kat Yu looks at the card, Dave accurately returns the card. Joe trusts Leon, he considers him a friend, but he is the oddest billionaire or maybe a person on the planet. Has he lost his mind and created some elaborate prank? But for what purpose? Joe asks his sound producer Jamie to get a deck of cards from the green room, a used deck. Dave and Kat Yu repeat the demonstration. Dave removes the duct tape blindfold and Kat Yu stands in the hallway unable to view Dave or the room. Joe shuffles the deck provided by Jamie and hands them to Dave, who looks at the first card and instantly Kat Yu yells 3 of hearts from the hallway. They complete the entire deck as fast as Kat Yu can call out the deck. Joe is confused, but is starting to believe, after all he's talked to Leon extensively about BrainLink trademark symbol and the possibility of electronic telepathy. And now Joe might be showing the world the first true and verifiable instance of the phenomenon without using bits and bytes. Or it's bullshit, and Leon's lost his mind. Either way, this will definitely be the biggest podcast of all time. Note to self, make the narration less opinionated. Joe, How is this possible? What else can you do? Cat you, name it, give me a book we have never read and either of us can read it to the other, like a bedtime story. Joe, I'm so fucking confused. Are you hearing his voice in your head? Cat you, no, it's more like a series of thoughts entering my consciousness and somehow I know they are from Dave. Why we are connected, I'm not sure. Joe, how did you and Dave meet in person? Leon interrupts, now we'll have to head back to the farm. After I set up my own SETI detection array I spent millions of dollars on my search and eventually I found something, a video feed, no audio. Joe, alien? Leon, no, a man alone in a room, Dave. Joe, Dave's an alien? Leon, no I wish, he's human, we've tested him, so is Cat you. Joe, okay then, you have a feed of this guy, where's it coming from? Leon, I have no frickin' idea. Joe, you have my attention. Leon smiles, I thought I might. Joe, how do we get to Mars from an unknown video feed? Leon, with great difficulty. Cat you, and tears. Dave, and laughs. Leon, Dave, and Cat you break out in laughter. Cat you, private joke. Joe, we'll come back to that. Leon, I couldn't figure out the source of the video, it's possible someone hacked my array and inserted it, but I doubted that, since I'm one of the greatest coders in the world. Dave, and modest. Joe, Cat you, and Dave laugh. Leon, we are getting closer Joe, do you remember that big lawsuit against me a few years ago? Joe, hard not to, no one knows why it was dropped. Leon, it was dropped because of Cat you. She worked for the company that was suing me, they tried to force her to testify against me and lie about her findings. She refused, told the judge the truth and the lawsuit was thrown out. Unfortunately she was fired. Lost her work permit and was sent back to Hong Kong. Joe, so she saved your ass? Leon, correct, and I was very grateful, but due to the S.E.C. and my other business holdings, to contact and thank Cat you would have looked inappropriate and opened an investigation. But yes, she saved my ass, however, and more importantly, I was impressed with her ability to analyze data. Cat you thinks in terms of data I believe. Cat you, I don't. Leon continues, but now I'm stuck, I'm rich, I'm famous, all eyes are on me, a half the world hates me, the other half loves or tolerates me. Either way, I don't care about their opinions, I only care about finding out why my array is receiving this feed and I need help to analyze the video. The data. I needed someone I could trust, of impeccable integrity, I needed a Cat you. Joe, is this a prank Leon? Is this some elaborate story to fuck with people for whatever reason? A movie idea? Cat you, I assure you this is no joke, Dave nearly lost his life, I nearly lost my mind, I wish this was fiction. Dave, me too. Joe, fascinating. Leon, as you know Joe, I spent a lot of time alone as a young person, trust does not come easily to me, but I trusted Doug, he never revealed the purpose of the dishes to anyone, not even his hot blonde hockey wife who insisted they keep no secrets. Dave, super hot wife. Leon, regardless, I sent Doug to Hong Kong to track down Cat you and offer her a job to secretly analyze the video and determine who the man in the images is, or maybe was. Joe, you thought it was a tape? Leon, we had no idea, could have been live, a recording, from another world, dimension, who knows? Joe, a Saskatchewan farmer, hockey player, and your secret agent? Definitely sounds like a movie idea. Leon, something like that. Anyway, Doug found her working in a coffee shop, told her the story, asked for her help, and she agreed. Joe, I think it's time for some whiskey or a joint, this is too much. Cat you, I don't drink or smoke cannabis. Leon, remember the trouble I got into smoking weed last time Joe? Dave, I'll have both please. Joe, Cat you, where did you think the video came from? Joe and Dave have a drink and smoke a blunt as Cat you continues the story. Cat you, I had no idea, but it didn't look like an alien world or person, unless of course their world looks just like ours, and I considered that as a possibility, but... Joe, how much of the room could you see? Cat you, everything, but it was a top-down view, like I was hovering in the center of the room watching Dave through a transparent ceiling. I assumed the camera was in an overhead light. Joe, so what can you do with that sort of feed to analyze it? Cat you, I wrote an AI to track every single activity in the room and built a database of daily events. I named the software MI, pronounced MAI, which stands for Micro Artificial Intelligence. Then I programmed MI to specifically capture all the keystrokes on Dave's laptop. Due to the angle of his screen we couldn't view it directly, only the keyboard. This was the only information we could capture that might determine who he was and the purpose of the video. Oh, and by the way the keyboard was normal and in English, so again, I didn't think it was alien regardless of the unknown video source. Leon, I still considered it for a while. Dave, do I look alien? Joe laughs. Joe, what did you learn? Cat you, almost everything. Dave is a writer and at the time was determined to live his life off his words, those are his words, not mine. Dave, I did write that. Joe, and your AI, MI, could determine what he wrote by video of his hands on a keyboard? Cat you, yes, it wasn't perfect at first, sometimes words were wrong or misspelled but it was close enough, it was like I was reading over his shoulder. Leon, think of it like a virus that reads your keystrokes. Joe, oh, so like the old TikTok before Bitter trademark symbol bought it? Leon, exactly, but without permission. Cat you, and without that permission, when Dave started writing in a daily journal or about his past life it became very uncomfortable for me, I realized I was invading his privacy. I no longer felt this could be some sort of previously taped feed, it had to be live. Joe, and... Cat you, and, I had to assume there was a greater purpose, a reason. Joe, God? Cat you, no, I don't believe in God or anything above human biology / intelligence. However, there was too much in my own past life to not wonder. I spent 6 years in university, I left with a PhD in computer science with my specialty being data analysis. And one decision a few years ago ended my career. I don't believe in God, but maybe fate? Destiny? Karma? Joe, 6 years for a PhD? Leon, and a master's in biology. Joe, so you're a genius, Cat you? Cat you, I'm not a genius, but I do have an excellent memory and when something is out of place my mind seems to stop until I can figure out what, and why. Everything about the video was out of place, I was determined to figure out why, simple as that. However, I was used to working on raw data. Numbers, stats, probabilities, permutations and more, but never a single source of data, and never a person being said source, a human, who had thoughts, feelings, and emotions he was expressing privately to himself through his words. I was essentially reading his innermost thoughts, his mind. Joe looks at Dave sipping his whiskey, all but ignoring the conversation. Joe asks, "This doesn't bother you, Dave?" Dave, no. Leon, at this point Joe, we are almost 6 months into the data and we still didn't know his last name. He wrote with various last names and we used MI to try and find someone on the internet who used those names and looked like Dave, but no luck. He had zero internet presence. And then one day that all changed when he set up a Bitter trademark symbol account. It was still a fake name as far as we could tell, but it was a name attached to a public social media account. We finally confirmed the feed was live or at least local to Earth and I had a way to find him. Joe, let me guess, since you own Bitter trademark symbol you looked at his personal information and what, his IP address? Leon, very good Joe, but no, it would be illegal and immoral for me to access any of my users' accounts, but yes I could have. Dave, I would have. Leon, anyway, I didn't have to, Dave had a specific purpose in creating the account, someone pissed him off. Joe, who? Leon, Tim Hortons, the Canadian coffee giant. Cat you continues, I knew he was probably going to Tim Hortons during the day because he often returned with their coffee cups and occasionally a bagel or donut. I could tell you exactly how many times if you like, it's all in the data. Joe, so with one video feed you really could tell almost everything about a person? Cat you, nearly. Anyway, Dave posted a video of an elderly customer being denied the washroom on Canada Day. He was writing at Tim Hortons when the man was denied and Dave filmed the interaction. He believed others would see the injustice and do something about the situation. They did not. Anyway, I'm speaking as if I know his emotions or intentions at the time. I didn't, but I could guess based on his past writings. Dave, she's right, I was pissed off at those fuckers for what they did to that man. Can we show the video? Jamie brings up the video and they all watch a man, a customer actually holding a Tim Hortons cup, being refused the washroom. Dave is instantly pissed off again. For the first time Cat Yu leans over to Dave and touches his knee. The grimace on his face turns to a smile as he instantly forgets the past emotion. Joe notices the subtle interaction. Do you speak telepathically through touch? Cat Yu, no. Joe, sorry to get off track, but I have too many questions. Cat Yu, we'll answer all of them. Joe, okay. Cat Yu, I'll speed it up. The Tim Hortons video gave us a location, a place to find Dave. I gave that to Leon and he sent his cousin Doug to find Dave at the Tim Hortons and follow him home. Joe, farmer/detective. Leon, exactly, but Doug couldn't find Dave at that Tim Hortons or at any in the area. He spent a week circulating between the stores, but no sign of Dave. Dave, I boycotted those fuckers. Cat Yu, and he started going to Starbucks. Once he brought a cup home we figured it out and Doug started to hang out at the Starbucks near the Tim Hortons and within 2 days Dave showed up. We found him. Joe, clearly not an alien. Leon, well clearly not from an alien planet. I'm still not sure he's fully human, even though I've had both Dave and Cat Yu extensively tested and scanned. Both are perfectly normal humans according to my doctors. Cat Yu, anyway, Doug followed him home, got his address and determined he was living in a boarding house of some sort. Joe, Dave, does it bother you that they are telling this story as if you are not here? Dave, no, they spent 2 years talking behind my back. What difference does this make? Leon, I need to use the washroom. Cat Yu and Joe, me too. The three leave the room to relieve themselves. Dave smiles and waves at Jamie and then pours himself and Joe another whiskey. The 3 others notice the large pour on their return. Joe to Dave, are you trying to get me drunk? Dave smiles, but doesn't respond. Joe, okay, where were we in this story? How the fuck did you 2 get married and selected for the first 2 humans on Mars? Dave, easy, I blackmailed them both. Leon, not true. I bought the house Dave was living in. Joe, well Doug bought the house, and then I knew everything I need to know, Dave's full name, his age, his past, everything a regular private investigator, not Doug, could find out about him, and who / what we're dealing with. Joe, what did you find out? Cat Yu, Dave needed help. Leon, we knew Dave had some hearing issues. Sometimes he would wear hearing aids, but not consistently, maybe 4 days in a row and then not at all for a week. It seemed to vary. When Doug finalized the sale and the previous owners were explaining the details on all their tenants, the owner told Doug Dave was basically mute and only communicated by email. Dave, it's not that hard to keep your mouth shut when you don't care what anyone is saying to you. I found email an easier way to live. I had time to think about my responses. It's similar to this situation. I would love to speak to you, Joe. But until I can sync the thoughts in my head with the words that come out of my mouth, I prefer to remain mute. By only speaking words I write, even electronically like we are doing today, I'm confident I'm speaking my truth, my thoughts. But after I've had time to think about them. With Cat Yu and Leon explaining the basic story, I'm free to think about what I want to say if I do decide to speak. Joe, so physically you can speak fine? Dave, if I'm not reading out loud I sound a bit like I haven't spoken for years, but yes, no physical reason, it's my choice to use a computer. Joe, it worked for Stephen Hawking. Dave, it wasn't his choice, but yes, the voice synthesizer is fine. Cat U, are you ready for the love story, Joe? Joe, please, you're killing me with details. Cat U laughs. Dave, you should see her database. Everyone laughs. Leon, a bit more background, Joe. The house is in Canada, and by coincidence in the same city where Cat U's cousin lived. How lucky. Cat U was able to get a visitor's visa to Canada, so I sent her there, and also by coincidence. Like this was a movie script, not real life. There was an apartment free in the house, so I moved Cat U into the house. It wasn't on the same floor, but it would get Cat U in front of Dave to see if he was completely out of his mind or only partially. Joe, why did you think he was out of his mind? Cat U, because of what he wrote. At times it was normal, a story with a beginning, middle and end. But other times it was all over the place, like he was writing 7 stories at once and none of them made sense. Dave, they made sense to me. Cat U, we know. Dave shrugs his shoulders. Cat U, anyway, we were led to believe he was mute, so I wasn't sure how to approach him. Obviously I can't confront him and say, by the way, I've been watching everything you do in your room for months, are you a bloody alien, or what? Joe, sorry, I have to interrupt you, the comedian in me has an odd question. Was he ever naked in his room? Did you watch him, you know? Sorry to be so blunt, but... Cat U, yes, I saw him naked often. I added an automatic blur filter to the feed to block it out like Japanese porn, but I had already seen his package numerous times previously. However, I wasn't attracted to him or his body. I wanted to figure out where the feed came from, nothing more. Dave, and I jerk off in the shower or in the dark, whichever feels more pathetic on any given day. Joe laughs, Dave smiles. Cat U continues, because of the hearing aids we thought he might be deaf and mute. So I spent a month learning ASL. I figured I could interact with him this way and set my plan in place. Maya would alert me when Dave was preparing to do laundry, and I used this information to bump into Dave in the laundry room. Joe, so you are a secret agent now? Cat U, I wasn't sure what I was, or what I was doing, but after I was confident Dave was in the laundry room, I took my own laundry to the room to meet him. Joe, you are meeting someone you've secretly watched for a year. Cat U, yes, and I'm not an actress or good at lying, but everything I would say to Dave would need to be a lie and he would have to believe me. Joe, this is a bit like an unbelievable movie. Cat U, I understand, I felt the same way often. Nonetheless, the time had come. I went to the laundry room and saw Dave standing in front of a washer, wearing the same hoodie he wore nearly daily since I had been watching the video, and for a split second I froze when he turned around, looked at me, and said hi like it was normal. Dave, I always talk to hot chicks, you never know when there is a chance. Everyone laughs. Cat U is embarrassed and flushes slightly. Cat U, now I was confused. I had expected an ASL conversation at some point, but now I didn't need it. I stumbled through, hi, I'm Cat U, I just moved in. He introduced himself as Dave but didn't give me his last name, which at this point I already knew was Jones, but now had to remember to never let on I knew his name, until he mentioned it first. Leon, Cat U has a photographic memory when it comes to conversations. Joe, what did you talk about? Cat U, not much, he explained the laundry setup to me and then left without engaging me more. Dave, I was playing it cool, hot chicks don't like aggressive guys. Cat U, I'm not your chick. Dave, wife/chick, what's the difference? Cat U, you see what I'm dealing with, Joe? Joe laughs and pours Dave another drink. Dave seems to get funnier under the influence. He joins Dave and then lights up a new blunt to share, offering it to Leon first, who takes it, but passes it to Dave quickly before the camera shows him holding. Cat U, anyway, the ASL was a flop. Dave spoke with ease to me, his voice was quiet and soft, a bit hard to hear, but normal. Leon, sorry to interrupt, but we should also clarify that when Doug bought the house we had a property inspection done. This included all the rooms in the house including Dave's. Joe, you wanted to find the camera. Leon, exactly, we got permission to enter his room and on that day we waited until he took his normal trip to Starbucks and then sent Doug and a fake inspector to search his room physically and electronically for any recording devices, any odd Wi-Fi signals, or any radio signal out of the ordinary. Joe, and you found the camera? Leon, we found nothing, we still didn't know where the feed was originating. Dave continued to write, I continued to read everything he wrote. I dutifully sent reports to Leon almost daily, but we were not making any progress. I was forced to use inside information on Dave to get him to open up to me. I knew his father had died recently. Dave didn't like his father's obituary and wrote his own version which I read and loved. I hoped he would bring it up during one of our laundry room chats but Dave never mentioned it to me so I asked him if his parents were still alive one day and he said no, both died when I was a teenager. I didn't know what to say, I wasn't expecting a direct, instant, and solid lie. I was confused, clearly Dave was open to writing anything, but holding back truths in person. Joe takes a big breath, sighing. Leon, and then we got lucky. Dave, sensing a joke I got lucky. Katyu raises her eyebrows at Dave and continues, my cousin Mary would visit me at the house on occasion. Dave was pretty much in a routine and there wasn't anything new to try and program with Mike could basically predict Dave's behavior on any given day with a 95% accuracy. I can show you the data if you like, Joe. Joe grins at the offer, no, that's okay, I believe you. Katyu, alright. Anyway, my cousin is a nurse and wears scrubs often, which will become important in a second. She was visiting one day while Dave was out at Starbucks, I assume it was Starbucks. Dave, it was. Katyu without pause, and by coincidence as she was leaving the house Dave was arriving. Now, my cousin and I look a lot alike. Most people assume we are sisters not cousins and some think we are twins. I was walking Mary out of the house when Dave came in and he seemed to take a step back when he saw us, maybe it was the twin thing. Dave, it wasn't. Joe, what was it, Dave? Dave, cousin Mary is very attractive, stunning really, hard to take your eyes off her like Katyu and I have a thing for women in uniforms. Katyu, it's apparently his kryptonite. He instantly said hi to me in a different voice and then introduced himself to Mary and shook her hand. We all talked for a few minutes and then Mary said she needed to head home and Dave suggested he walk her to the nearby metro station to be safe. Joe, was the area unsafe? Katyu, no, Doug bought the house for $4 million, all the houses in the area are near the same value and the neighborhood was completely safe. I walked to the metro all the time at night and was never approached or harassed. Joe, I think I see where this is going. Katyu, go ahead. Joe, they hooked up. Katyu, correct, and Mary didn't know what I was doing at the house, my connection to Dave, she thought he was nothing but a housemate. Joe, so Dave got lucky, how did you and Leon get lucky? Katyu, Dave started to talk, well he started to read out loud for hours. I didn't need audio on the feed to know this. I simply watched when he was reading his Kobo and if his lips were moving I could quickly walk by his door in the house and hear him. Which was a risk as I had no reason to be on his floor of the house, but... Joe, why is this significant? Leon, because of his voice we figured he had some sort of medical condition that prevented long conversations. Now we knew it was either a mental health condition, or his personal choice. Plus, he seemed a lot happier after he got laid, sorry Katyu. Katyu, no, I agree, he was happier, unfortunately too happy. Joe, what do you mean? Katyu, well he started writing like a madman, someone on a mission. He was writing a story about a benevolent dictator day and night, only stopping for a few hours of sleep. Dave smiling, I still like that story. Joe, Dave, do you want to tell this story? I don't mind the electronic voice. Dave, no thanks, I like Kat's version better. Joe, wouldn't they be the same? Dave, overall, yes, but my approach isn't as PC as Kat's and Leon's. Katyu, the problem Joe, and what we haven't discussed yet is Dave was diagnosed with ADHD just days before entering the house and was taking Adderall on a regular basis. However, he was also using cannabis and mushrooms on occasion. Joe laughing, the drug hat trick. Sorry, it's the only Canadian hockey humour I know. Cat U, yes, unfortunately he ended up in the penalty box, the hospital. Joe, OD. Cat U, in a sense, but not directly. By this time I could pretty much watch every word he typed in real time, and the story was okay, not his best work, but it was interesting and funny. Dave, be honest, it was fucking brilliant. Cat U sighs, she knows she has about 30 minutes or less until the booze in Dave's system fully kicks in and he takes over the conversation, but Cat U knows how to shut down Dave, well then publish it. Dave, when I'm ready. Cat U, after day 3 he only had about 6 hours total sleep and didn't seem like he was going to let up. Until now Dave had either taken the correct amount of Adra or maybe double, but Mai had no record of anything more. Now however he started taking them throughout the day. 6 or 7 times the dose. He stopped sleeping, instead when tired he would take a cold shower and go back to work. I knew this was not good. The human body needs sleep and when Leon and I talked about it we decided to intervene. Joe, how? Cat U, again, we got lucky. Not with sex this time, but eventually Dave got hungry, he hadn't eaten for days, only energy drinks. Dave, Joe, what she's not telling you for some reason is I was also opening the Adra capsules and snorting them for a greater hit. But to be fair I didn't notice much difference with the snorting. Cat U, at this point I'm ready to call 911 and get a mental health check done. But I had no reason that I could share with the police. He wasn't harming anyone else in the house or causing an issue other than using the showers every few hours. And since I didn't live on his floor how could I tell the police I knew this? I couldn't. I was stuck watching a man possibly overdose in front of my eyes. Cat U, and then as I was about to call 911 regardless, Mai alerted me when he left the house without shoes and started walking towards 7/11. By this time Doug was at the house with me trying to determine a reason he could call the cops as the owner. But we were unable to find one until Dave left. Walking down the street with no shoes is enough for an anonymous call to the police, which is what we did. Dave, they ratted me out. Cat U, we saved your life. Dave, debatable, but... Cat U, Dave was picked up outside of 7/11 sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk. He was unresponsive to the police so they took his wallet, found his address, and brought him home where Doug was waiting for them. When they arrived Doug met them in the driveway and introduced himself as the house owner. The police asked if Dave lived there and when Doug said yes, they let Dave go and he went back into the house and his room. Dave, you are missing the funny parts. Cat U, it's not a funny story. Dave, matter of opinion. Dave and Cat U begin talking in their minds. Until this point they resisted their secondary telepathic conversation, not wanting to be impolite to Joe and his listeners, but Dave with a few whiskeys begins to open the connection to Cat U, a type of telepathic drunk dialing. Dave tells Cat U, tell the embarrassing parts and people will remember. Cat U responds fine. Go ahead dear. Dave, Joe, when I was in the back of the car handcuffed, yes Cat missed that part too, I didn't know what the fuck was going on, I barely knew who I was or where. But I did know I wanted to be out of the car and the handcuffs. When the one officer was outside talking to Doug the other was in the driver's seat waiting and for some reason I figured I could hypnotize her into letting me go, so I looked her dead in the eyes and said I love you, I love you. I love you. At which point, for some reason she got out of the car, let me out, and removed the cuffs, but she did hold onto my arm until Doug confirmed with the other officer that I did indeed lie there. Joe, mushrooms eh? Dave, exactly, although it was cannabis and Adra, not mushrooms. Joe, yes, edibles. Dave, exactly. Cat U, by now we had our own cameras all over the house and I was watching all of this from my room, I couldn't believe the police let him go. However, Doug was able to tell them about the showers and added a few exaggerations, forcing the police to call for a mental health check. The paramedics came, they tried to talk to him, he was lying in his bed at his point awake, but unable or refusing to speak. Dave, maybe a bit of both, can't really remember. Joe, they took him /you? Joe no longer knows who to address. Cat you, yes. Dave, cunts. Joe, who? Dave, the paramedics. One large guy kept tapping and pushing hard on my chest plate with his fingers. It hurt like hell, but I couldn't move my arms to push him away and I couldn't speak to tell him to fuck off. And that was the last memory I had for a week. Cat you begins to tear up. Joe asks if she's okay. Leon, I'll take the story from here. Dave, no, it's okay, I'll take it. Cat, take a break. Cat you gets up, reaches her hand out to Dave and he gives her an odd low high five type grab as she leaves the room. Dave, this is harder on her than me. Joe, she blames herself when she should be proud of her actions. Joe, I can only imagine. Dave, I don't remember much about the first week. I have a faint memory of being in the and lying in a bed, but then I woke up in a hospital room what felt like the next day, but in reality it was 6 days later. I slept nearly that entire time according to the medical records. Apparently I woke up for a few hours a day and talked to a few psychiatrists, but I have no idea what I said. Joe, it wasn't in the medical reports. Dave, it was, but I haven't fully read them, I don't want to know. Joe, why? Dave, it wasn't me who said those words, I remember nearly everything I say. Not always word for word like Cat, but often close. Whoever was speaking, it wasn't Dave. Joe, who was it? Dave, no idea, maybe my subconscious. Joe, maybe the weed gods. Dave laughing, maybe, except I was sober, but either way, when I woke up and realized where I was, a psych ward, I was pissed off. Why was I here? How did I get here? And where the fuck is this hospital located, because I don't recognize the name and I don't recognize the view from my window. I could see mountains, but none were familiar. I asked to be released so I could go home, and when they refused and told me they could keep me under a section XXX 123 law, note to self, look up real law, I got really pissed, angry. Joe, probably not the behavior they would release you on. Dave, correct. Dave, now comfortable, pours another drink and splashes a taste in a glass for Leon. He reluctantly accepts and the three of them clink glasses before Dave continues typing rapidly on his computer. Joe wonders if he's on Adra now. Dave continues, at this point they had me on antipsychotic medication and Benzedrine, Benny's, a favorite of Jack Kerouac you know. Regardless, when they saw the change in personality they increased the Benzedrine to calm me down. I don't know if you've ever taken Benny's, but for me they feel like the perfect amount of edibles, relaxing but no wild edible thoughts or hallucinations. When they hit my system I took a breath and figured out a plan. Joe, can I ask why they were holding you? What was the diagnosis? Dave, well I tried to find out at the time but they wouldn't give me my file without a Freedom of Information, FOI, request. But when you are in the psych ward there is no way to make a FOI request. Coincidence? But when I did get the records later and the only diagnosis was David was in a catatonic state. Which is basically bullshit and could mean anything. Cat you re-enters the room. Dave, my plan was simple Joe, I was going to act my way out of the hospital. But first I needed a clear head and I was sure that antipsychotic meds were the source of my confusion. So I stopped taking them, I did exactly what they show in the movies. I pretended to take the pill and then spit it out in the toilet once the nurse left. They didn't do the open your mouth thing. Joe, and that worked? Dave, eventually. The next morning I woke up angrier than ever about my situation. I walked up to the nurse's station and demanded my file. They refused to get a supervisor, they refused me access to the internet or a phone so I could contact someone about my situation. They owned me. I was so pissed at this point I must have looked like a madman. I walked back to my room and on the way I saw a fire alarm and I pulled it, setting off a piercing siren. I then sat in a chair outside of my room and waited. Maybe now they'll give me the file. Joe, did they? Dave, no, 5 security guards and one nasty bitch of a nurse surrounded me. She asked me why I pulled the alarm and I said I didn't. It was on the CCTV of course, so they knew, but at this point it was a game for me, 5 guards for a pulled alarm? She continued to try and get me to admit, I continued to refuse. And then? Dave pauses, shakes his hands to release the tension and continues, she, the bitch, started to threaten me with the quiet room, which I had no idea what that was. In some ways it sounded peaceful, but considering the source, I assumed it was not, and at this point I said nothing more. I stared directly at her eyes and showed no emotion, made no facial movements. It was enough to push her buttons. She went back to the nurse's station while the 5 guards kept me surrounded. When she returned, 2 of the guards grabbed my arms and started to lead me to the quiet room. I didn't struggle, but I didn't make it an easy walk. I was ready to fight physically. Joe, shit. Dave, yes indeed I was in the shit now. Anyway, the room was not a quiet room, it was a cell, almost exactly like a prison cell, but worse. A dirty mattress on the floor, no pillow, sheet, or a blanket. And one of those combination toilet forward/sinks, again straight from the movers. The guard threw me on the mattress and began to take off my clothes. I was wearing my street clothes at the time. But apparently the rules are that I needed to be in hospital garb, so they forcibly removed my clothes and dressed me in patient scrubs. They also may have given me a shot of something in my ass, I remember a needle, but who knows, either way, now I really was in jail. Both in my mind and physically. Joe, Jesus. Dave, indeed, I wish he was there to help me. At one point I called out for God's help, but that cunt didn't show up. Dave stops typing and stares at his screen, not moving. Cat, are you okay? Dave, yes. A few hours later, a psychiatric nurse and 3 guards returned to the cell. I spoke to her for a while but remember nothing of the conversation. All I could do was stare at her socks. They were 2 different socks, same colors, but different patterns. However, whatever I said must have worked and they let me out an hour later. When I got back to my room and was sure they were not around, I slammed my bathroom door so hard it almost came off its hinges. It's clear now that Dave is reliving the experience and Cat wants him to stop. He doesn't. Dave, after the door, the anger left me, everything left me except determination. I would get out of that fucking place in days even if I had to sneak out. But first I put my acting hat on. I apologized to the nurse the next day, even though I didn't mean it. I still hate that bitch today even though she was only following policy. Over the next 3 days I was a model patient on the outside, and furious on the inside. I did as they asked, pretended to take my medication. And eventually was able to convince the doctor everything was okay. I told him the medication was working. Which is really all any doctor and especially psychiatrists wants to hear. Once the pills work, their fucking job is done. It worked, and the prick let me go home. Joe, how bad was it? The psych ward? Dave, physically it was nice, a newer facility. I had my own large room and washroom, 3 meals a day, lots of snacks, TV, video games, a few distractions. But no internet or phone or computer, my lifelines. But when I was being dragged into the quiet room and saw it, all I could think of was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Joe, fuck me Jack Nicholson. Cat rejoins the conversation. In the meantime Doug and I searched his room again, looking for a source of the video or anything. We found nothing, so Leon suggested I take a copy of his hard drives. I had Dave's passwords, so I did. Joe, how did that help? Cat until then I could only read what he wrote in the room, now I had everything he wrote in the last 5 years to review. Well, for my and I to review. Joe, what did you find out? Cat everything, if you believe what he wrote. He wrote about his entire life from age 7 to present, his life story. I now knew everything about his past. Dave, snooper. Joe, everything? Cat yes, I could tell you his first crush, girlfriend, the night he lost his virginity, with who he lost it, which neighbouring town she was from, everything. Joe, it's mind reading without permission. Cat unfortunately. Joe, why? Dave, she feels guilty, Joe, but there is no need, she did what she needed to do regardless of me giving her permission. None of it matters, Joe, we don't have the answers as to why we can communicate via whatever means, brain waves, gravity waves, alien chips in our heads, whatever, it doesn't matter, when this podcast is broadcast our lives are over. Joe, why? Dave, Joe, if even 20% of your viewers believe this story, what will happen? Joe, the internet will go nuts. Dave, yes, and who are they going to investigate the most? Leon is already under a microscope and was barely able to keep this secret. If it wasn't for Cousin Doug, I could still be in that room. But Leon is used to that exposure. I'm a nobody, Joe. Yu is an attractive, beautiful, wonderfully kind genius, so I think our names will be Googled and every part our past lives exposed to the world. Stories about my first fuck are the least of my worries when the internet starts to make up conspiracy theories. Their problem though, I'll be on Mars with Yu, and by the time Leon sends the next participants, every story/theory about our pasts will be considered real by someone somewhere on Earth. And the fucked up part is I don't care, I'll gladly share anything, write about anything, discuss anything. Does it really make a difference in the end? Joe, I know there is a reason for all of this and why Leon picked you two to go to Mars, but I'm still questioning the reality of telepathy in my mind. Yu, as did I. As I still do, daily, hourly. Dave and Yu talk telepathically. Dave thinks Yu should explain her reverse evolution theory, RET. It explains how at one point humans had an organ or body modification that allowed telepathy. Yu tells Dave I'm not ready yet, we need more MRIs. Now please let me continue, we'll talk later. Dave grins at Yu. He loves it when she grinds his gears. Yu, I'm almost there. When Doug and I searched his room the second time, I looked at Dave's Kobo. I already knew which books he had downloaded. Well, mine knew and provided me a list, but I didn't know for sure if he read all of them, so I snooped through the device. Joe, what did you find? Yu, every book I looked at was either on the first chapter, a chapter near the middle, or the end. At first I thought this was a coincidence, but once Dave and I actually talked, I found out he only reads those 3 chapters of any book. Joe to Dave, why? Dave, for most books it's all you need. The author had a reason to write the book. I trust the author, I trust the publisher believes it's truthful enough to be printed as non-fiction without getting sued. From there anyone can determine the point of the book by reading those 3 chapters, as well as any introductions, summaries, appendixes, and the index if there is one. Flowery forwards by famous people also add to the possible authenticity, as they too don't want to be associated with the fringe. Joe, and this works. Dave, think of your friend Graham Hancock and his body of work, both fiction and non-fiction, depending on who reads it. I assume archaeologists consider all of his books fiction? But my point is you understand / trust Graham, yes? At a level greater than a friend even? Joe, yes. Dave, and if you read the summary of his next non-fiction book on some new archaeology find that he believes is older than anything before, do you have to read the entire book to agree with the hypothesis in the first chapter? Joe, no, but I probably will because I enjoy his writing and the details about the discovery. Dave, understood, however, I don't care about the details, or the author, they are not my friends. I only care the theory. Reading is repetitive and bores me. Plus I'm not looking to debate or argue these theories, only absorb them for my own use. Then maybe one day I'll be in a conversation like this and I can pull a reference out of my ass from some obscure book from the 1900s. Dave pulls out a pack of cigarettes, offers one to everyone else, only Joe accepts, the 2 light up. Yu, one of the books he read to the end and often was about telepathy. It was a novel obviously, until now no one has been able to prove true telepathy. Joe, and you 2, or 3 can. Leon, yes, without a doubt. Once we confirmed the connection, and after we convinced David this was all real, I got to work on the science side. However, all my resources are in the USA. I have access to any medical device you can imagine, but I needed Yu and Dave in the USA. Joe, so we are skipping ahead? Leon, a bit. We can return to that part of the story. I think it's better if Dave explains the first contact portion. It's not aliens, Joe. Joe, okay. Leon, skip ahead almost a year, Joe. Kat-Yu and Dave are now married, making Kat-Yu a Canadian citizen, and together they are now allowed to enter the USA without a work visa for Kat-Yu, now Kat Jones technically, although no one calls her that. I'm not even sure why everyone always uses her last name Yu, but we do. Kat-Yu, blame Dave for the Yu business. Leon, anyway, it was also long enough after the lawsuit, so if someone made the connection between me and Kat-Yu it wouldn't matter. Especially since that company went out of business for fraud. But as you know, my life is under an electron microscope and a movie in the making regardless of telepathy. Dave goes to the washroom while Leon continues. I put them both through the astronaut training program, which includes more medical and psychological tests and scans that you could imagine. However, I only cared about one, their EEGs. Their brainwaves. We had them both wear 24-hour monitoring devices for weeks. We did the car demonstration thousands of times and with various variables. Not only can they do the trick in the same room blindfolded or whatever, they can do this demonstration halfway around the world. Which we tested by sending Kat-Yu home to visit her mother. While there the connection was no different, according to the data. Joe, and the data said what? Leon, it showed that a secondary connection between them exists. During the demonstration, when one looks at the card they create a pattern in both of their heads, nearly identical every time. Kat-Yu, within 99%. Leon, and the second the pattern shows up in one brain it shows up in the other instantly. How, we don't know. Dave returning from the washroom, or do we? Joe, you know something? Dave, no, I'm just fucking around, I'm as clueless as everyone else. Leon, other mammals have this capability, although it's through sonar which we can detect. However, we can't detect any sonar coming from or being received by either Dave or Kat-Yu. Dave, this is my point about books, Joe. You trust Leon, yes? Joe, yes. Dave, but this is hard to believe, isn't it? Joe, yes. Dave, so do you need a book filled with data to believe us? Which, by the way, we brought on a hard drive for you. Every MRI, CT scan, blood test, EEG, weightless training results, G-force simulator, psychological exams, everything. It would take you a year to read. Or you can simply believe that Leon has done his homework before coming on your show and possibly destroying his entire empire, when the world believes this is all some sort of elaborate prank for whatever reason. And I could think of a few reasons to fuck with the world. Joe, like? Dave, revenge. Kat-Yu, he's kidding. Leon, how about one last demonstration? Jamie, can you take Dave or Kat-Yu, your choice, out of the building and tell them about anything you like? Joe, Jamie, do you mind? Jamie, not at all. Jamie picks Dave and they go outside. Jamie talks to Dave about his obsession with golf, and simultaneously as he speaks Kat-Yu repeats Jamie's words. Word for word inside the studio. They return. Joe tells Jamie what he talked about and Jamie confirms. Jamie then reviews the video of Kat-Yu speaking as himself and confirms it's at least 99% accurate. Jamie, I'm starting to believe. But how do we know it's not some new secret BrainLink trademark symbol technology? Leon, we can look at their recent brain scans, and if you like we can go after the podcast and get 2 new MRIs to show there are no implants. Kat-Yu, can we get back to the books for a minute and the psych ward? It explains the origin of the cards. Joe, please do. Kat-Yu, after the psych ward Dave was sent to another psychiatrist who performed a complete examination, every test in the book, ADHD, autism, bipolar, sociopath, psychopath, everything, including an IQ test. Joe, and Kat-Yu, well, on the mental health side, Dave was diagnosed with various conditions including ADHD, autism, bipolar, and schizophrenic, but Joe, but Dave, but I lied on all of the mental health tests, I wanted those diagnoses. Joe, why? Dave, I was about to become homeless, street homeless. I was on welfare and it was enough for a room, but not enough for food or life. I couldn't work with the tinnitus. I was unable to focus on coding databases with a loud ringing in my ears 24/7, and I couldn't find a doctor to fill out a disability application for tinnitus. With these additional diagnoses, I was approved for medical disability and my monthly payment was doubled, enough to live on. Barely, but enough to give me a break. I tried to consider it universal income, not welfare. Joe, and the IQ test? Dave, I didn't fake it, I tried my best, except the memory portion. The pretty young lady giving me the test had a very soothing voice, and in the memory portion she would ask me to repeat a list of numbers back to her, sometimes asking me to sort them in an order. For some reason it was like her last words were the only words I've ever heard in my head. Eventually this list was getting long. I thought, shit, I don't want the test to show a high memory, and I purposely tapped out, so to speak. Joe, why? Dave, I was afraid if it showed a high memory I would lose the benefits, my only source of income. Leon adds, the results were inconclusive. On some areas Dave was off the chart, both high and low. All of the language and visual test results were high, as well as current events, but others like math were low. A good example is, reading comprehension was in the 98th percentile, but his spelling level was at a grade 7 level. Joe, can you explain why? Dave, I can. Leon, not now. Dave wants to explain how his spelling level is significantly higher when he types on a computer, even without using spell check, how muscle memory affects physical memory, about how he could ace that fucking test if he was in front of a keyboard, not holding a pen. Instead he allows Leon to drone on. Joe notices that both Leon and Kat-Yu tend to stop Dave at times, like they are holding him back from telling some long inconsequential story that has nothing to do with their intended purpose on the Joe Rogan Experience. Joe wouldn't mind a side story, but also notices the seriousness of Leon's demeanor. Kat-Yu, his memory scores, this is what started the card demonstration. Dave started reading about people who have photographic memories and how they can memorize a deck of cards in seconds. Some took a minute. Dave believed he could do the same and started to practice. I watched him for hours shuffling a deck, spreading it out, attempting to memorize, and then testing himself, flipping over one card at a time. Joe to Dave, how did you do? Dave, I sucked at first, but once I could get the first 5 cards, then it was only a matter of increasing that number 1 per day, and in a couple of months I figured I would be able to do the whole deck. Which is what I did, and it worked. In 2 months I taught myself to memorize a deck perfectly. Joe, but that's not unusual. Kat-Yu, agreed, it's a skill, not telepathy, or so I thought as I watched Dave perform this trick for hours. When Dave spread out the cards I would see them on my screen and attempt the same memorization feat as him. Joe, let me guess, you can memorize a deck too? Kat-Yu, no. Well maybe, but not by myself. Joe, what do you mean? Dave, I'll explain. Joe. I'm not proud of this, but I hated being on disability. I knew if I could relieve some financial stress in my life I could once again either write or code, but I needed money. Joe, unsure where Dave is heading, okay. Dave, I hated the handout, to me it was a failure. I was determined to earn a living again, by any means possible, including gambling. Joe, card counting? Dave, no, side bets. I went to the casino, made some friends, and then bet them I could memorize a deck of cards in a minute or less. The first guy I bet $100, which was about half my remaining food budget for the month, and I failed. I didn't get past card 5, they laughed at me. Joe, why? Dave, no clue, at home I had this perfected, I assumed it was nerves, so I had a beer and tried again, this time $50 just in case. Joe, and you lost again? Dave, I did, 7 cards, better, but still I ate ramen noodles the rest of the month, just like the movers. I could have gone to the food bank, but again, pride decided against that action. Joe, I don't care if this story is bullshit now, you've got me hooked, what happened next? Dave, I continued to practice, took $200 from my next disability check and tried again, this time at a different casino, but still no luck. 10 cards was my maximum, in public. I gave up. I couldn't afford to test it any longer. But that night on my return home I ran into Kat and we talked a bit. I didn't tell her what I was doing but decided to pretend a bet with her, which she agreed to. Kat, Dave said, do you want to see a card trick? I knew where he was headed, and I watched him learn this trick. I internally reminded myself to act surprised when he succeeded. Dave, Kat shuffled. I spread the cards out on a table and memoized them. I asked Kat to pick up the first card and focus on the card. I was pretending this was some sort of mind-reading trick as a backup for failing, but I didn't need it. I got the entire deck right and Kat pretended to be amazed. Kat, grinning, my acting skills were improving. Leon, the short story Joe is that Dave was never memoizing the entire deck. Every time he was successful, Kat was watching. They were connecting telepathically and neither knew or understood why. Joe, who figured it out? Kat, Leon. Leon, no, I had a clue and started the process. I told Kat to keep practicing with Dave every time he asks but to find opportunities to reshuffle the deck without him seeing. She did this and Dave continued to memorize the entire deck after the secret shuffle. At this stage telepathy of some sort was the only explanation. But then Dave caught Kat reshuffling. She wasn't doing it every time, but when he caught her he didn't say anything. Kat, I got cocky, I'm not a magician. Dave, it worked out perfectly. Joe, why? Dave, I was nearing the same conclusion. I thought maybe it had something to do with the house and being comfortable in my environment, but I tried the trick on a different housemate and once again couldn't reach double digits. I assumed this was the average human limit. So why perfection with Kat? Joe, aliens. Everyone laughs. Dave, I wish. No, when I caught her reshuffling I was silent but I looked into her eyes as if to say I think I know what you are doing. Kat, and those are the exact words I heard in my head. Not in Dave's voice, only thoughts. Joe, is this where you fell in love? Dave, who says we are in love? Joe, you are married, I assumed. Kat, this is where we both walked away from each other, and returned to our rooms without saying another word, as if our ability to speak verbally ceased at that moment. Dave, noticed how she skipped over the love question. Joe? Kat, I'm getting there, have another cigarette. Dave acts like it's an order from Kat and obeys. Joe, okay, so now it's not cards, it's words. Kat, exactly. The cards were always random, how could either of us know? The feat to memorize a deck is within everyone's capabilities, right Leon? Leon, yes, I was able to do it as well, it took about a month to learn a memorization technique. Joe, so you go back to your rooms and start telepathing or whatever the type of communication would be called. Jamie, can you Google that? Kat, I think it's just telepathy. And no, we didn't start communicating. I called Leon and Doug. I was worried Dave might lose his mind again and watched the feed to his room. Joe, you continue to watch the video feed even with my? Kat, unfortunately yes, when it felt like an emergency, also I thought when Dave removed the bag of magic mushrooms from his nightstand. Joe, oh shit, Dave was looking for answers. Joe laughs. Dave smiles and pours them another drink. Kat sighs, she still has to deal with Dave the rest of the night and get him to kill Tony. Joe, now looking direct into Dave's eyes, asks, did you find the answers? Dave smiles. Dead silence. Joe, nothing more? No story by any of you? The room remains silent for a second and then Kat states, he won't say. Dave smiles again, holds back a laugh while looking at Joe before they break out in laughter as if Kat told the greatest joke in the world for the first time. Leon and Kat smile, but realize this is some sort of inside psychedelic joke. Joe, what drugs have you taken, Dave? If you don't mind me asking. Dave, nearly everything except DMT. Joe, heroin. Dave, its cousin, morphine. Joe, LSD. Dave nods, and then remembers it's a podcast and responds with, yes. Joe, and your biggest dose of mushrooms? Dave, 10 g of penis envy magic mushrooms. Joe laughs, why that variety? Dave, I read an article where a person took a bunch and their tinnitus went away permanently. The story also noted that variety is one of the strongest available. Jamie has been fact-checking everyone as they speak and interjects, exactly what Google says. Joe, 10G wasn't your first trip though? Dave, no, I worked my way up. At 3G I managed to get near complete relief from the noise for a few hours, but it would return when the shrooms left my system. So I did what any normal sane person with no mental health issues would do. Joe, you increased the dose. Dave, was there any other option? Next, 6 grams would give me nearly 6 hours of relief, but would only work every third or fourth day. I couldn't take it daily or it seemed to have no effect. Joe, not exactly microdosing. Dave, which I also tried, but I have an addict's brain, I need that noticeable change in thoughts or body sensations. Joe, which brings me to the next question, weren't you tripping balls with visuals? Dave, no, I took it at night and timed it so I would fall asleep near the end of the trip. For the first time in years I could get to sleep without music, white noise, or booze. Dave takes a breath before resuming his typing. Now he's looking at the others while he types /speaks, and I have a theory about visuals and psychedelics. Well, at least mushrooms. Joe, what's your theory? Dave, it's programmable, the trip, or at least adjustable by changing the environment where you take them. Joe, why? Dave, because by taking them at night and alone in my room I did experience visuals at first. There was painting in my room I would stare at for hours while listening to music. The colors were amazing, as you know, the scene was in 3D, like Super 3D, it was a standard trip, fun, entertaining, etc. But as I continued eventually I got bored with the animation so to speak, and although I could go to a park in the daytime and experience more of the same, I didn't see the point. I wasn't in need of entertainment. Like you said, I was looking for answers and I believed the visuals were a way to avoid finding them. If you are tripping balls it can be extremely enjoyable visually, but at the end of the day it's only entertainment if you get nothing else out of it. Joe, did you find the answers? Dave, you already asked that. Joe laughing, I know. Dave, I couldn't afford 6 grams twice a week, I couldn't really afford any mushrooms so I took the plunge, the heroic 10-gram dose. Which by the way I think we need a better name than heroic. Joe, like? Dave, idiotic. Everyone laughs, especially Cat U, who Joe notices is once again holding back tears, why he's unsure. Dave, like I said earlier I've never done DMT, I would have if I had access, but I didn't, but I wonder if my 10-gram trip was similar because like before I took them at night, but this time the mushrooms hit more like morphine. Joe, how? Dave, at a certain point you know you have enough and that your body is going to sleep, a wave of comfort flushes your body. I've experienced something similar on high-dose edibles, but again, it's not the same as morphine. Dave, anyway, when the 10-gram hit it kicked my ass, locked me on the bed and sent me somewhere, for I have no idea how long, and no I'm not going to talk about that experience, but when I woke up the tinnitus was gone, like absolutely gone, it was so quiet I thought maybe I was dead. Joe, like an edible overdose? Dave, exactly, that feeling of death, except I was awake, wide fucking awake and the world was in 16K clarity, you know what it's like. Joe, I do. Dave, but in the moment I knew this was different than edibles, those trips you feel foggy or asleep, I was fucking awake. Or I thought I was awake but I needed to know for sure so I went downstairs where my roommate was watching TV and started up a conversation. It was completely normal except all I could focus on was the silence between his words. I would pause and enjoy it for a second before responding. Joe, your roommate didn't notice you were tripping balls. Dave, no, and that told me something, it was a clue, a hint. I went back to my room, enjoyed the silence. The next day my roommate said nothing out of the ordinary. Joe, and the tinnitus? Dave, returned in a few days. Joe, fuck. Dave, but it's nearly gone now. Kat-Yu and Leon return. Joe misses that Dave just mentioned a cure for tinnitus, a condition affecting millions around the world, and without a cure leaves individuals with a feeling of desperation and pointlessness. Leon, now what do you think, Joe? Joe, I have no idea. Leon, welcome to my world the last few years. Kat-Yu, and my nightmare, temporary. Joe, okay, so how do we get to marriage? Love. Note to self, happy smiley, insert some reason / way for Kat-Yu and Dave to get over the fact that she's spied on him for the past 2 years and somehow they can now look each other in the eye and speak. Find a reason where it would be okay to allow someone to anonymously monitor your life, your thoughts, your actions, and not hate them at the end for the invasion of privacy. Add more of Dave's and Kat-Yu's backstories, find some common event in the past to have them feel special / unique / odd. Maybe they start talking in their dreams and eventually realize what's happening, or maybe one day Dave just takes a chance and says, Kat-Yu, can you read my fucking mind? Because I think you can and it's driving me fucking nuts. Or maybe Dave leaves the house and rents an Airbnb, Kat-Yu and Leon lose the feed. Dave sends Kat-Yu an email, tells her the whole story from his perspective. If it's true they can communicate, he asks her to meet him at the train station. Kat-Yu accepts the invite. They take the train back and forth across Canada until they can figure out this connection between them, the purpose, the reason. They fall in love during the trip and decide to share their miracle with humanity, even though most likely they'll be laughed off the stage. Note to self, figure it out later, I'm sick of this story. Joe, well I agree, that is one hell of a love story, again almost movie-like, fuck The Notebook. But how does that get us to Mars? Well, Kat-Yu and Dave to Mars? No offense, but you both are computer programmers, wouldn't it be wise to send a previous astronaut? Or a scientist of some sort? Soil / air specialist, an engineer, anyone with experience with isolation? Dave, isolation? I spent 3 years alone in a room. No, I wasn't alone on another planet, but I might as well have been, and when we go to Mars we'll be almost constantly under watch anyway, probably live if I know Leon. Leon wants to interject that there is a 3-minute delay from Mars, but holds back the information. Joe, understood, but I'm thinking of the mission itself. Neil Armstrong was a pilot, not a coder. Kat-Yu, but Margaret Hamilton's Apollo code put Armstrong on the moon. Joe, agreed, she isn't celebrated like she should be, but what is the correlation? Are you the next Margaret? Kat-Yu? Leon cuts off Kat-Yu's response. Joe, I'm sending Kat-Yu, Dave, and 50 of my latest human androids, the Mars One trademark symbol model. If there wasn't a 3-minute communications delay to Mars I would only send androids. But for what we are building we need boots on the ground who can instruct the androids instantly as if they are humans, showing them hands-on what we need them to do, from clearing rocks to assembling shelters. They will be robot slaves. And I know I shouldn't make that analogy. But I'm in so much trouble on bitter trademark symbol as it is. What's one more shitstorm? Joe, it's the singularity. Dave, Adam and Eve. Kat-Yu blushes. Leon, no, 2 humans who have found a way to communicate telepathically. Which is the main reason, Kat-Yu and Dave can program together through telepathy faster than 20 of my regular coders. I don't care how they do the telepathy. Joe, why are they so fast? Dave, I'm good at finding her errors. Kat-Yu, bugs. Dave, mistakes. Leon, never mind. But yes, Kat-Yu writes superior code, but when a buggy situation occurs Dave seems to be able to point it out quickly, as if he was waiting for her to make the bug. Dave, error. Leon, together they are the best is all I know, and because they can communicate anywhere without electronic devices, radio failure isn't even possible between them. Plus with the speed they solve issues they can reprogram an android quicker than sending the request back to Earth. Joe, you are sending brains not brawn. Leon, yes, and of course I'll be criticized to no end, but I don't care. The mission to Mars is funded by me and the profits from my companies. It's my ship and my choice. Joe, why don't you go as well? Leon, what if there is another Dave and Kat-Yu on Earth? What if they are only the beginning of a new form of communication? What if I have another video feed to analyze? Joe, do you? Leon slowly, no, but if this is possible without BrainLink trademark symbol, imagine what will be possible when BrainLink trademark symbol is fully functional? Dave changes the subject, how much longer until we have to leave for Kill Tony? Joe, had enough of this podcast? Dave, I know the odds of being pulled out of Tony's bucket, I don't want to miss a chance. Joe, understood, don't worry, I'll get you there on time. How does your act work with Cat-U? Dave, I write something about a funny situation that happened to me last week and she narrates it while I act it out. Joe, like a mime? Dave, no, mimes are dumb, like how it really happened. Leon, mimes scare me. Dave, I have no idea if it will work or not, we've practiced but never performed on stage. Doesn't really matter, I'm sure Tony will ask if we have any special skills after the set and then the card demonstration should freak him out. Joe, are you going to tell him it's telepathy? Dave, no, I'll tell him to watch this podcast to figure it out. Joe decides to end the podcast there. If Dave manages to get picked, Joe doesn't want him hammered on his podcast and blow his first chance on stage. Joe, why don't we end for the day, relax, go to Kill Tony, see what happens and then if we choose we can resume this discussion tomorrow. Everyone agrees, the cameras are turned off. Joe, Leon, is this real? Leon, absolutely. Dave, test us any way you like, use your own doctors, Leon will pay for it, right Leon? Leon, I've paid for everything else including a multi-million-dollar home for you and Cat-U that you don't use, so sure, why not? Dave, do you see why it's called bitter trademark symbol, Joe? That evening Dave is indeed pulled from Tony's bucket, their act kills on stage. It's so funny, Tony keeps them rolling at the 1 minute mark and by the 2 minute mark the set is done. The crowd is standing on their feet, a star is born. The trio return to the JRE studios the next day. Cat-U and Dave finish the love story portion of the interview, Joe and Leon are in tears by the end of their story. Joe publishes parts 1 and 2 of the historic podcast on a Friday the 13th, Leon's idea. The internet explodes, everyone assumes both Joe Rogan and Leon Smuck have gone insane or are playing an elaborate prank with Dave and Cat-U being actors. Leon ignores the world and blasts the telepathic lovers off to Mars. Dave will be the correspondent back the world, with Cat-U as the brains of the operation. Although the world knows they are married, Dave and Cat-U managed to keep one secret to themselves, they never revealed to anyone they chose not to consummate the marriage on Earth. The world obviously assumed they had, one look at Cat-U and how could anyone hold back their physical desires? Her long silky hair alone was enough to set Dave's heart on fire. But Dave, always looking for a bestseller, thought it would be a better story to wait until they reached Mars, and Cat-U agreed. Not only would they be the first humans to have intercourse on Mars, it would be their first time for them as well. And if Cat-U gets pregnant that first time, it would be the ultimate hat trick scored by the cosmos. The day they land on Mars, the entire world is watching. Leon had previously sent hundreds of drone ships loaded with supplies. Ironically, it's an image similar to the satellite dishes still perched on Cousin Doug's farm. Cat-U and Dave's ship, named the Blue Bomber, lands perfectly, textbook. Leon breathes a sigh of relief, naming a ship bomber is not a good story ending for a movie or in real life. Leon waits for confirmation that Dave and Cat-U are safe and then announces to the world the source of the secret video, the rest of Cat-U and Dave's secret telepathic love story. Meanwhile on Mars, Dave and Cat-U fuck their brains out. Leon expects them to stop consummating eventually, but 3 hours later he gives up, tells the press they'll continue the news conference tomorrow at the same time. This should be enough for Cat-U and Dave to get it out of their system. The possible endings. Leon doesn't know the source of the video. Dave and Cat-U go to Mars but are stranded when the world economy collapses. Thankfully, they brought a ton of sperm and eggs with them, and although it's uncomfortable for Dave to perform artificial insemination on Cat-U with another man's sperm, he has no choice. The biology tells him randomness is king, not bloodlines. Eventually they populate Mars without additional help from Earth. 100 years later, Mars is a utopia while Earth heads into a dark age. Eventually they return, sharing the secret of Mars, everlasting life caused by some particle Dave dreamt about one night. And then Cat-U creates an experiment to capture the particle, which of course succeeds. The world finally believes their telepathy story and reunites globally to complete Leon's original vision for Mars, and they wanted the long-life particle as Cat-U's experiment fails on Earth. Leon, now an android complete with his original consciousness, sheds a tear, which is considered a miracle since the android has no tear ducts, but the tears are analyzed and a perfect match to Leon's DNA. Once again the world forgets about Cat-U and Dave and focus on this new unexplainable mystery. End of story. Dave is the source of the video, but Leon, Dave, Cat-U, and the most advanced radio technicians in the world don't know how he does it, but they all keep his secret. End of story. God is the source of the video and Dave and Cat-U really are Adam and Eve, but God needs them on Mars, and contrary to popular belief God is unable to interact with matter, only minds. End of story. God's will, no questioning God's will. Aliens are the source of the video, Dave's dad's idea to test Cat-U as a new queen for their home planet. The aliens pick them both up on Mars and return them to their home planet, where the offspring of Cat-U and Dave will reinfuse their world with new human DNA. DNA that allows telepathy. The world is shocked when their communications from Mars end suddenly and without explanation. End of story. Comedians in another dimension secretly feed Dave comedy routines through some cosmically entangled gravity wave system. Dave and Cat-U perform, and absolutely massacre on Kill Tony before exposing their secret. The world assumes they are nuts, and Cat-U and Dave exit stage left to a private island that Leon set up for them. Apparently Leon got quite a deal on the property due to some controversy. Dave and Cat-U prove telepathy on the island and then return to society to teach the world their method. It's not easy and most people give up, except comedians in this dimension. Many manage to open the channels and together they all move to Austin, Texas to create the comedy capital of the world. In the process they end homelessness worldwide, by saving humanity through laughter. End of story. XXX, no Mars. Dave, Cat-U, and Leon are discredited when Dave loses the ability to communicate with telepathy after smoking a ton of DMT with newly made friends following the now famous JRE podcasts. Leon loses all of his companies, but vows to rebuild his life and fortune. Dave and Cat-U travel the world talking to the remaining believers. But with no source of income they resort to selling Dave's sperm to their followers who believe it will give their children telepathy. Unfortunately Dave is unable to convince Cat-U that artificial insemination is against God's will, and instead of selling sperm he should impregnate the women. Via the direct approach, he fails to convince his wife. What's worse is the man's source must be collected dry. Dave's not allowed to use lube, not even his favorite brand, a brand he developed personally, and their backup source of income aptly named D&KY. Their catchline being, a jelly-like coconut oil lube. Not helping, Cat-U refuses to assist in the semen collection process, claiming carpal tunnel syndrome. Dave thinks it's a bullshit excuse, but what can he do? Cat-U wins in the end, she always does. End of story. End of story. Thanks for reading Dave's scripts and scraps. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work.